immediately invoked function expressions IIFE in JavaScript. It is generally called IFE. It's not any formal definition or something. It is just a concept where you use the anonymous function or the arrow function that you can create it and you can execute it immediately. So when you're executing it immediately and that too only once, what's the need to create a function? So with that, we can solve a couple of problems in the JavaScript and we can build some great functionality out of it. Let's see how. So very first thing, let's say I'm having a couple of lines of code here. For example, a equals to 10, then I'm consoling it and some functionality is already written we can consider in our program. And all of a sudden, now in between of our program, let's say this is only 2 to 3 lines of code, but understand we are writing a program, the file in which we are having thousands of lines of code. And now we need to write a small 2 to 3 lines of code, which is not at all attached with the global scope. Let's see, I'm giving here called B equals to 2 and let's C equals to 1 or maybe 5. And I just want to perform the console of B plus C. So this is a small part of execution I want to do. And this is only related for some certain business operation which starts here and which should end here. So beyond this particular end, for example, if I try to use the variable call B, it's accessible. So we don't want this functionality. It is a very narrow functionality. It is being required only for a small specific purpose. I don't want the variables and everything which are declared and used here to be accessed outside in the global scope. That might create some other problem. So I want to keep it a restricted way. So what I can do for that, I can create a function, of course, right? So we can create a small function here, for example, a test function. We don't want any parameters in that, nothing. We'll put our code here and at the end of this, we'll make a call in this way. So this is solving our problem. Now in this case, if I try to call the value which is present inside the B variable, I cannot access it in the line number 14 because this B and C variable are become part of the local variable for the function here, which is a test function. So we are solving the problem with this. But let's say we require this a lot of time and we need to create this kind of things many times in our program. So every time creating a function is not required. Because when you are giving a name to function, the general definition of function is that you create a function and call it hundreds of times whenever it is used. Let's say like this. But we don't want to do that. We just want the execution of this function should happen only once. If you're doing in this way, again, I can use the same function and call it again that we want to restrict. We also want to restrict the function call should happen only once. So how it is possible now? Because you have a name. So with that name, any other developer can also call it, right? So if you want to do that, what we can do, we can create an anonymous function. Okay, so if I'm creating an anonymous function here, let's say with the name test function. So this is my anonymous function that I'm putting inside the variable called test function, and that variable I'm using to make a call. But again, I can also make use of the same variable to make a multiple call, which we don't want to do that. If you want to restrict that function call, what you can do, you can just say test function equals to null. So from now onwards, if you say test function, I want to call you for some specific purpose, it can't happen because inside the test function variable, there is no function now. There is a null value. But again, it will create some problem in the runtime and the program will crash. So to avoid all this situation, we'll try to just solve the problem which we were having initially. We want to execute this function only one time. So instead of assigning it to a variable, I'll remove this. So now we are having a function with us. What we will do, we will just enclose this within the rounded brackets, and here only will perform the call of the function. So this opening and the closing bracket, what it is indicating? The calling of the function that we generally do. And this is what my function is, this one. So this is how we are creating a function without any name. We are writing some specific functionalities there, and we are making an immediate execution also. Now, is there any way to access the variable b here outside over here on the line number 15? No, because it's a local variable. You can't access it. Let's see the error as well. Yes. And now, is there any way to call the same function again? No, because we don't have any reference for that. We don't have even any variable which is holding our function with this. So this is the way the immediately invoke function expression solves the problem, and we can create a function and we can execute it immediately.